Let's learn Torah. This week's parsha is Parshat Lech Lecha, but I'm going to do something as an intro to Lech Lecha. And the first part is really a deep part. It's going to be the story behind the story. I'll go slowly, but I think it's a very important point to make. As we all know, because I say it almost every time we study together, Hashem chose certain stories to tell us, right? The Torah, especially in Sefer Bereshit, which is mostly stories, history, Hashem skipped over many of the generations, and he chose a specific story. The end of last week, there is a very, very intricate story, which is famous. Obviously, if Hashem chose it to tell us, there is a deep reason, but it is also a very strong connection to this week's parsha. Okay, so instead of giving you all those intros, let's see what I'm talking about. All right, so we're going to share our screen with there we go. Okay, so at the end of Parshat Bereshit, Parshat Noach, in Perek Yud Aleph, we have a very famous story. It's called the story of the Tower of Babel, Mcdowell Babel. Informs readers about how such a wide variety of different languages came upon the earth. Now, interesting, again, Hashem chose this story for many reasons, but this story, ladies and gentlemen, has a clear impact on what our world looks like today. According to this story, there was one uniform language for everybody. I guess that was a lot easier to take tests in. But they became different languages because of that story. Look at our life today. There are different languages. We also know that the place was called Babel because Hashem confused the languages, right? In the Hebrew, Babel refers to a city. We know there's a story. Talmud Bavli, Babylonia, better known as Babylon. And here the Torah explains to us where this name came from. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you something interesting. While I was preparing for the class, I just didn't want to show it because it was very boring. It's one of those, historical. But I looked up on the internet the Tower of Babel, and there is an archaeological video of a fellow who went to the area. They pointed it out. It's in Iraq. I don't know. And they found certain archaeological remnants of the city of the Tower of Babel. Fascinating. I mean, you should see it if you want. I just didn't think it would be really up to our type of class. So the story of Babel. By the way, for those of you who are Hebrew Safa people, the original Hebrew says Safat Kol Haaretz. The concept, now the word Safa is lip, right? Sfatayim. But Safa means a language. Where does it say that Safa means a language? In this story is the first time that the Torah actually says it. Okay. So what we're going to do is, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at the story. Now I'm going to go slow, and in my humble opinion, there is an underlying major message that Hashem is trying to tell us that affects us today. That's behind this story. But first, I'm going to take the story and I'm going to rip it apart a little bit. Okay? Follow me. So the pasuk says, "Vayihi kol haaretz safa echat." Okay, it starts with this intro. Everybody on the earth spoke one language, udvarim achadim, and uniform words. Nice. Okay. Bet. Vayihi benasam mikedem, and it came to pass that these people traveled from the east. Vayimtzeu bika, and they found a valley. Be'eretz shinar, vayeshvu sham. Okay. The first thing I would say if I was a student in this class, I would say a very, very famous teenage expression. Who cares? Who cares? How many times are there stories? We tell the story. Do we care where they came from? So they came from the east. And they came to a valley. Yay. All right. We'll call them the valley people. What's the difference where they came from? Okay. So you're going to tell me, Rabbi, you're nitpicking. Okay. I'm a nitpicker. But that's my first problem. Watch how the who cares gets really worse. Vayomru Yishav Reyehu. And a person said to their friend, Hava nilbina levenim. Come, let us make bricks. and fire them thoroughly. And wow, and the bricks were for them like stones, and the clay was for them to mortar. Okay, if they're going to build a tower, don't you think that the Torah can give us enough intelligence that we know how to build a tower? Yeah, you take bricks, you make bricks, and you make a tower. Right? Okay. Are you in? You want to nod your head? Are you in my who cares mode yet? Not yet? Okay. Yeah, and that's ridiculous. Why does the Torah? Now, I don't feel so bad for asking this question because when I looked up, I'll come back to this in a second, just to show you this question is asked by all the rabbis. What is the significance of the making of the bricks in connection with the rebellion against God? Yada, yada, yada. Okay. My next question is Pasuk Dalet. It's Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Now, I think that anybody who has a child in a lower school, age, right, in pre 1A, a kindergarten, if they brought home an arts and crafts project from Tower of Babel, you have the picture of them building the tower. And again, if I would ask you, what was the goal of the tower? What did they want to do? So you'll say they wanted to rebel against Hashem. So I wonder if your kids ever asked you this question. Really? So they're going to build the tower up, till they go fight. And sometimes I've seen pictures, cartoons of that, of Tower of Babel with a sword going up to the clouds. You really think that's what they were doing? Let's see what it says. Vayomru, hava nivneh lanu ir. Let's build us a city. Okay, it says a city. Mcdowell, and a tower, v'rosho b'shamayim, and its top into the heavens, and let us make ourselves, I lost that last word, a name. Okay, so it doesn't actually say they're going to go stab God, but how unrealistic is that? What does that mean that they wanted to go and build a tower up to God? Okay, these are all my questions. I saved my big question for last. I'm not ready yet. So I'm skipping some psukim because it explains it. Fine. Hashem saw what they were doing. Says Hashem, Hava Nerda, again, he's talking to the Malachim. Let's come down, right? And Avla Sham Sfatam, let's confuse their language so that no one will understand each other. And that's how we're going to stop them from building the Migdal. And then they were scattered all over the world because they couldn't communicate. And Rashi even says it's so interesting. They couldn't understand each other. This guy says, pass the brick, and the other one says, pass the mortar, and they didn't understand each other, so they got into a fight, and they cracked their skull. Okay, that's the story. I'm questioning all these things that make it so strange. Yes? Everybody, yes? Yes. Here's the biggest question. Rashi and the Gemara, Rashi gets it from the Medrash, compares, let me stop sharing for a second, compares two generations that got a punishment. They received punishment. One is the Dor Hamabul, the flood people, and one is the Dor Haflaga. They call them the Dor Haflaga because they were separated. You tell me, or you're not going to tell me because you're muted. Who received the worst punishment? Who of the two got punished harder? So the Midrash says the door of the Mabul got punished harder because what happened to the door of the Mabul? They were totally destroyed. The door Haflaga were separated. Go to the corner, separate. Of the two, it seems that the door Haflaga did a worse thing. They wanted to rebel against Hashem. So watch what it says here. Fascinating. Says Rashi and everybody else. The generation of the flood was totally destroyed, while the people of the generation of dispersion were merely dispersed. Rashi explains that the unity that existed within the society of the generation of dispersion is what saved them. They were unified. They loved each other. They worked together. The generation of the flood was a totally dysfunctional society. They hated each other and stole from one another. The people of the generation of dispersion, on the other hand, despite the fact that they were heretics, were unified. They loved one another. They spoke one language and had common purpose. Rashi concludes, from here we see that disputes are hated and great is peace. So the Dor Haflaga, since they were unified, made an impression in the eyes of Hashem. When I gave this class once, I said, it's like your kids got together and conspired together, loving each other, to do something wrong in your house. So you're not happy about the fact that they did something wrong, right? But it's kind of cute, they work together. So because they work together, as compared to the door of the Mabul. Last and final solid question before we answer this entire thing. Can I take a second here to think this out? So they were unified, and that's why they weren't, right, punished as bad. So how did Hashem stop them and punish them? What did he do? He dispersed them. I don't understand that. If that's the godless that they had, that's the advantage that they had, that they're a unified group, you're going to punish them by making them ununified? Do we understand the question? Are we happy with the question? I mean, we're not happy, but yes. What is the whole story all about? The whole story is all about something that we really need to have in our world today. And it's probably one of the most important things in Judaism. And you know where this answer came from? That's the beauty of Torah. From a word, one word, in this week's Parsha. You got to be on call to find things, a key. The key to this entire story is opened in a word in this week's Parsha. Let me give you the intro. In chapter 13, in Perek Gimel in this week's Parsha, and we'll get to that story a little later, we know that Avraham, Sarah, and Lot left Eretz Haran, and they came to Eretz Canaan. We know that, right? Everybody knows that story. That's the Lech Lecha. And then they became rich. We'll get to that later when they went to Mitzrayim. And then at some point in this relationship, okay, let me look at you so you know what I'm talking about. Avraham's nephew, his name was Lot. Lot came with Avraham. Avraham's nephew decided to separate from Avraham. We know this story. We know the famous city that he went to. He shouldn't have gone to that city. He went to a city of bad people, but the city had good grass and a lot of water. Of course, the name of the city is Sidon. Very good. When he separated from Avraham, guys, watch this. One word opens the key. Watch. Vayivchar lo Lot et kol kikar hayadeh. And Lot chose for himself the entire area, the plains of Jordan. You ready? Vayisa Lot mikedem. Oh, snap. And Lot traveled from the east. Can I roll back for a second? How did this story start? Vayihi binasam mikedem, right? Vayisa Lot mikedem. You guys ever play the match game? I found the match. Look at that. Kedem. What is that? And they separate. What does that mean he went from Kedem? So Rashi says that there are two Perushim. One is that he actually went from east to west. Nice. According to the Midrash Haggadah, watch me, he distanced himself from Kadmoni. Kedem is not east. Kedem is the power that preceded all of us. Who is the power that preceded all of us? Hashem. That's what it means, Mikedem. He said, Lot, I care neither for Avraham and nor for his Hashem. So in that story, Lot's decision to leave Avraham was twofold. One, he wanted a bigger place to do his business. But two, as they say in Yiddish, he was hatched from God. He didn't want to be controlled with God. He wanted to go away from Kedem, from the God involvement in his life. Now, help me out with this. I'm going to go back to our story. Basically, the Torah is saying that the generation of Haflagah became so sophisticated, they made a society amongst themselves. Look, we're friends. We have rules. We have a Congress. We have a Senate. We have a president. We have a Supreme Court. We don't need God. Who needs God? We have our own laws. Now everything will make sense. Look how beautiful this works. Ready? So I'm just going to read the part that I saw and then come back. That is the message of this story of the Parsha. They became so intoxicated with their ingenuity and they were so overwhelmed with their intelligence for inventing bricks. Okay. So now let me explain. Now watch how this works. They all were united, right? I'm going back to the story. Vayehi ben Asam mikedem. They decided to travel away from having God in their life. Vayinsu'u bik'ah. I always say this. Do you know why that's so important? What was it? What were they going to do? They're going to build a tower up as big as they can, right? They want to build a skyscraper. If you want to build a tall building, do you go to a mountain or do you go to a valley? What's the answer to the question?
Mountain.
Thank you so much, right? If you have that contractor, don't hire him. Who goes to a valley? They're going to the valley to spite God. We don't need your mountain. We can even go to a valley. We don't need what you created in the 6 days of Breshit. Next, let's keep moving. Yeah. Vayomru, and they said, let's make bricks. Okay. Can anybody tell me? I mean, I can't imagine you do know, or maybe you don't know. What did they build things with in those days? What did they use to build? Stones, rocks, natural building things. They didn't make bricks. Who made bricks? They used stones that were created by Hashem. Comes this generation and say, no, we're smarter than that. We don't need stones. We're going to make bricks. We're going to produce things ourselves. We don't need to rely on supposedly that there's a God. And even the Torah, look how beautiful if this Perush is. And look what it says. Vatahi lahem, I mean, I said this already, but look at it now. Vatahi lahem al-leveina, and the bricks were made for them as a stone. And now I want to tell you, it's a metaphor. It doesn't mean that they're going to build the building and put their sword into the clouds. No, let's build a society. Let's build ourselves a name without God. No God. We don't need God in our constitution. We don't need God in our rules. We don't need God. We can take care of ourselves and we can do everything and be successful because we are a moral people. We have rules. We have morality, yada, yada. That's what they wanted to do. So what does Hashem have to do? Hashem has to show them that this can't work. It just can't work. The lesson here of the Dor HaFlagah, ladies and gentlemen, is not a punishment. It is a consequence. And God says, let me show you what happens to a society who has moral values that are based on human decision and not divine decision. What did Hashem do? Hashem made it a little challenging, made it a little difficult. He changed their language. And now being able to communicate was a little more difficult. And when a difficulty comes up, when it comes to Ben Adam L'Chaveiro, they couldn't take care of it, because if it's difficult and you make your own decisions, then you change your decisions, and they started fighting and they were dispersed. Says Rabbi Schwab, one of the most famous rabbis from the community in Washington Heights. I believe this explains the sin of the Dor HaFlagah as well. Rabbi Shimon Schwab writes that there is so much discussion about the unity of the Dor HaFlagah because the downfall of this group was their unity and their willingness to work. That was the downfall. They said we can take care of ourselves. The Dor HaFlagah used the unity to become so intertwined, so interdependent, that they felt they no longer needed God. They were such a close-knit group that no matter what difficulty would come about, they believed that they had the tools to rectify the problem. They felt completely self-reliant. And this is exactly Hashem's response to them. Because of all this time, they still don't get it. They're making the same mistakes that led to the downfall of Adam and Cain, which means basically the lesson of the Dor HaFlagah, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I made this clear. And that's why it's such an important story in our life. Let me make it, I want to say something that I usually talk about. It's okay. what's considered the right thing. The moment we allow society to decide what is the moral values, that society will self-destruct. Because the moment it becomes a little difficult for us, then it becomes mutar. This is okay because this is how I feel. Okay, I'm going to throw out one of the most famous moral questions in U.S. government today. It is called abortion. Is it morally right to abort a child? 50 years ago, you'd have most of the people who run this government say it's morally wrong. Today, we are criticizing a Supreme Court judge who was put on because she happens to think that God says it's the wrong thing to do. Because, but what do you mean God? Me. I think this is what I think. All questions, I don't want to go too much because I don't want to become too political, but I can't imagine. If you do disagree with me, write it in the chat and I'll respond to you. What is considered morally correct when it comes to marriages? What's considered morally correct? Things have changed over the last 20 years so quickly that you can't even follow it. And what happens? That's because if it's too difficult, no, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with that? That's not morality. That's not how it works. I don't care how close people think they are. You can't make decisions. There has to be a God that makes decisions. Everybody with me on this? I hope so. Okay, I know I don't give you a chance to respond, but if you want to discuss it, I'm very happy to discuss it after the class. But that's the lesson, and that's a big lesson. Now watch how cool that is. Who comes right after this parsha is Lech Lecha. Who is the main star in Lech Lecha Vayera, right? Avraham Avinu. So Avraham Avinu lo halach ba'atzat anshe dor haflaga. Avraham did not walk in the ways of Dor Haflaga. And I want to explain why. Avraham is the father of the Jewish nation. Okay, someone unmute yourself. What was Avraham famous for in his day and even till today? Hachnasat orchim. Excellent. Chesed. Wait. Chesed. Chesed? Avraham Avinu, the first Jew, I would say no. He should be famous for how long his payas is. He should be famous for how big his beard is. He should be famous for how much Torah he learned. No. What's he famous for? He explained to the world, you want to be chesed? Chesed has to be dictated by Hashem. Get it? His lesson of monotheism is not only to believe in one God, but to believe that God dictates to me what is the right chesed to do. Are you guys getting this point? I hope. Cookies, is this clear?
Wait, Rabbi Besser, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Linda. Hi. Can you explain what you just said? I'm not understanding so much what you just said. With
Avraham?
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, Avraham Avinu, let me just show you that source, okay? But thank you for asking, Linda. That's so nice of you. Avraham Avinu follows the Dor Haflaga, right? Follows the Tower of Babel. That's the next story. And the greatness of Avraham Avinu is that Avraham Avinu was known for chesed. Why was that so big? Isn't Avraham Avinu known for monotheism? Monotheism, believe that there is only one God, believes that a God is involved, because it's not enough, because you have to bring God's rules into your chesed life too. Why am I nice? Why am I doing achnasat orchim? Yeah, I mean, you want to do it because you want to do it, but you're doing it because God said so, because those are the values that God put in our world. Because if you do it because of God, then you don't change. I'll give you, Linda, you following? Good? I hope. Okay, I lost you. Yes.
Yes, I'm here. I'm good. Thank you. I got it.
Linda, I'll give you, and everybody else, this is not a one-on-one on Linda. Okay, I'll give you I'm going to quote something that somebody told me. Okay, I shouldn't say somebody told me because I do the same thing. Tell me if you ever heard this. You're talking to somebody and the other person tells you something bad about this person. So you say, hey, it's Lashon Hara. And they say, no, it's a mitzvah to speak Lashon Hara about this person. Oh, really? All of a sudden you decided that it's a mitzvah to speak Lashon Hara? Because that's when morality and Ben Adam L'Chaveiro, you make that decision. No, you don't make that decision. There's a Shulchan Aruch, there's a Torah, and it tells you what the right thing to do. I'm going to prove this. I see you guys are not liking this. So I'm going to prove this. Watch. I want you to see this pasuk. This is a pasuk much later in chapter 18. Hashem is saying how unbelievable Avraham Avinu is. Ready? Avraham Ayoyel Goy Gadol. He's great. He's going to be a great nation, right? Hashem, this week's parsha, chose Avraham. We are the people of Avraham. We are his children, and he's going to be great. Why? Why did Hashem say that Avraham is unbelievable? Watch. Ki yidativ. This is straight out of the Torah. Hashem is saying, I know. Lemana sheyitzaved banav. He's going to command his sons. Ve'ed beito acharav. And his household. Watch. Shamru derech Hashem. They will keep the way of Hashem. Now, wait. So you would assume if they're going to keep the way of Hashem in the mitzvot. They're going to keep kosher. They're going to keep Shabbat. Look what it says. V'shamru derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat. To be charitable and to be justified. Why is God choosing that? God is choosing that to say, you ask a Jew, why are you putting on tefillin? He will say, because God said so, or because my grandfather bought it to me. No. Why am I putting on tefillin? Because God said so. But ask a Jew, why are you helping the other person? He needs to say, because God said so. Of course, you have to think it, you have to feel it also. But the moment you let morality, moral behavior, how we treat each other, be decided by not a God, that's a problem. Okay, I hope everybody got the point. I hope, yes, move on.
Yeah,
Ellen,
thank you.
Ellen, you agree? All right. Now I'm going to sideswipe. So the relationship between us and us and other people need God in it. And not to learn from the Dor Haflaga that we think we don't need God in our relationship. Okay. What is the closest relationship we have with another human being in this world? The closest. Everybody's afraid.
Husband and wife.
Oh! So, Dor Haflaga could be husband and wife. Husband and wife develop a relationship. I love you, you love me, right? This is like Mickey Mouse, right? We all love each other, and we don't need God. I don't. Can you imagine if you go home and I'll tell you a famous story. Just say the famous story. What's his name? Forgot his name. Okay, so one of the rabbis, his student was in Kollel with him. Who's the guy that gives a Navi share cookie down on Avenue S? Okay,
Reisman.
Rabbi Reisman. Thank you, Peggy. Rabbi Reisman tells the story that there was a boy in Kollel. He just got married, and a week after he's married, he comes into Kollel, and the rabbi sees that he's a little sad. He goes, "What's the matter?" He goes, "We had our first fight. So the rabbi says, "Look, when you go home for lunch now, in between, go to the flower store, buy her a dozen roses, say you're sorry, and give it to her. It's going to be great." All right. After lunch, this guy comes back to the Kollel, and he's even worse and more upset. Rabbi asked him, "Did you do what I tell you?" He says, "Yes." He says, "What did you do?" He said, "I went to the flower store. I bought a dozen roses. I went to my wife and I said, my rabbi said to tell you that I'm sorry." Okay. How romantic would it be that I tell my wife, I love you because God said that I have to love you? Okay, so you're going to look at me like I'm nuts, right? You're going to say, that's crazy, right? I'm not crazy. Everybody try to think back to the last chuppah or your own chuppah. In the chuppah, there are 7 brachos that are said to the couple. Sheva brachot. The first blessing, the first, number 1. Obviously, it's a reason it's number 1. The very first blessing is, after Borei Pri HaGefen, I'm sorry. Yes, it's Borei Pri HaGefen, but the first of the actual Sheva brachos. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Shehakol bara lichvodo. Hashem created everything for his glory. Can I ask you a question? How romantic is that? This is the first moment I'm standing with my wife. A rabbi is coming to bless me. So I know, I'm going to ask you, if you were writing the blessings, what would you put as a blessing? Have a happy life, have a healthy life, love each other, have healthy children. Come on, guys. You definitely would have said that, right? The very first message to a husband and wife to be successful is, you should know that everything is here because of God. Why is that a message? Ready? Watch the Gemara. So the Gemara says that a man and woman's name is Ish, Isha, right? The divine presence will rest between them. Why? Because Aleph and Shin, the word Ish is spelled Aleph Shin. The word Isha, right, is spelled Aleph Yud Shin. Isha is Aleph Shin Hey, right? And the Hebrew word, right? So what's in there? There is Aleph and Shin, and in between is Yud and Hey, which means that God's name is in between the husband and wife. You take away God, you take the Yud away, you take the Hey away, it spells Esh, fire. That's beautiful. The fire that exists between man and woman fuels a fiery, passionate relationship. But there is only this flame igniting. The fire of passion could all too easily be transformed into a fire of discussion. Okay, with all due respect to my beautiful wife, staying happily married is a challenge, and we know it's a challenge. It is. It's almost impossible for two people who are different people to always be happy with each other. If somebody says, I'm happy all the time, they're either on drugs or they're lying. It's not true. It's just not true. Because there is a fire, which causes a passion, but the same fire could be a problem because sometimes it is challenging. How do you solve that? By putting the Yud and the Hey in between. If every couple understands that it's not them, it's the God that they are doing. The important that they do Shabbos together. The important that they have children together. The important that they make Shem Shamayim, a Kiddush Shem Shamayim together. Then all of a sudden, it's not about me. And it's not about her. It's about Hashem. And that is why it's the very first blessing. And even when I'm not happy with something, Hashem says, you're going to kill me for this. Too bad. Love her anyway. Too bad. That's your job. Yes, you have to tell your wife, I love you because God said so. Yes. And once I understand that, and that's my role in life, obviously you have to say it a little nicer than that, but yes, that's what's important. And it's the same message of the Dor HaFlaga. Exactly the same message of Avraham Avinu. Okay? I hope I made my case. I screamed my case. I hope I made my case. And I have two very nice sayings here. You ready? Marriage is a gift from Hashem to us. The quality of our marriage is a gift from us to Hashem. And this one is better. A great marriage is not when the perfect couple comes together. It's when an imperfect couple learns to enjoy their differences. And how do they enjoy their differences? By understanding that their goal is to have the Yud and the Hey in them. Okay, I beat this one to a pulp. It's 40 minutes. Okay, totally different. I'd like to give you a little bit of a background. I don't know if you know this. And also there's a reason I'm doing this because, okay, here it goes. So at the end of last week's Parsha tells us who these people are. Let's just follow them a little bit. Okay, I'm going new topic. Eile Toldot Terach. Terach was the father of Avraham Avinu. Terach had three boys, Avraham, Nachor, and Haran. Good. Haran, Holid et Lot. So everybody should know that Lot is the nephew of Avraham. How? Because he was the son of Haran. Now, watch. Vayikach Avraham v'Nachor. These are two brothers. They both took women who were sisters. Okay? Avraham and Nachor married sisters. Shem Eshet Avraham Sarai. We know that. We know it's Sarah. The Shem Eshet Nachor is Milcah. Who are they the daughters of? Haran. so these are Lot's sisters. You got it? So Lot's two sisters married Avraham and Nachor because Haran was the father of Milcah and Yiska. I'll get to the Yiska in a second. So first of all, I just want to tell you, for those who are troubled with this, first of all, you're allowed to marry a niece. So Sarah was Avraham's niece. Even till today, you're allowed to marry a niece. You will find in all of Bereshit, we're going to get to it, basically, they married family. They married family. They really did. Certain things, family members, you were allowed before the Torah, but they married in the family. They didn't want to marry out of the family. And we'll talk about that later. So Avraham married Sarah, who is his niece. A quick one. I just want to show you something. I had the merit to speak at a chuppah last week, and I mentioned this Gemara. I just want to show you interesting. I think it's a beautiful thing. So Sarah had another name, a quick one. Her name was Yiska. So she's called Sarah and Yiska. Okay, Yiska. By the way, next time you're looking to name a child and your next daughter, call her Yiska. It's cute. There are two qualities for which Sarah is noted by the sages of Torah: her prophecy and her beauty. It is written that as a young girl, she was known as Yiska, which literally means to see. There are two interpretations as to why this name was given to Sarah. First, Yiska is vision. She is said to have been born blessed with divine inspiration. We're going to talk about that in the next couple of parashiyot, that she had nivuah. She had the ability to see things that Avraham didn't see. Excellent. This bothered me. Ready? Second, it is said that she was exceedingly beautiful to behold. Both of these attributes deal with sight. The first being a spiritual sight that Sarah itself possessed, which clearly affected the way she perceived the world. And the second, regarding how the rest of the world perceived her. Okay, so maybe you don't like what bothered me. It bothered me that the Torah is pointing to a woman's physical beauty. Really? Really? That's what you're saying? I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to say about Sarah, Rebbitzin Sarah. Can you imagine? You ask somebody about a certain Rebbitzin, a holy lady. You go, she's very smart, and whoa, is she beautiful? I don't know. It bothered me. Really? That's what we're promoting? That's what we're teaching our children? That the Torah is calling her Yiska because she was beautiful to look at? Okay, maybe that doesn't bother you. It bothered me. So I'd like to tell you what I think it means with a backup. There's another Gemara that also bothered me, and I'll tell you the pshat. I got this from Rabbi Prague. The Gemara says, involving a bride who is in her father's home. How do you know if a bride is good? Kol zman she'eineha yafot, as long as she has beautiful eyes, then you don't have to check her out. A girl, a bride who has beautiful eyes is a good bride. Okay. Once again, really? That's what we're telling us? Yo, you don't have to check anything else. Can you imagine such a shidduch? Would you accept it, such a shidduch? Your kid's going to bring home a girl. He's going to say she's beautiful. You're not going to ask about her values. You don't ask about who she is. She's got beautiful eyes. You're going to marry the girl? Should I just end with this? No, I can't end with this. So the pshat is like this, and I love this pshat. Sages said, any bride whose eyes are beautiful, is this something that senses God? Okay, they're asking a good question. How many ugly women are there? Okay, let's not that. The difficulty is, why did the sages see fit to give advice to a certain external beauty? It's not charm, vanity. Rather, it is certain that they give advice to certain her deeds. And this is the advice, that he check if she has a kind eye and sees things with loving kindness. Her eyes are kind to the creatures. It doesn't mean a girl with beautiful eyes. It's a girl who sees beauty with her eyes. And in my humble opinion, this is the same thing the Torah is saying here. Sarah is called Yiska, because she has vision, but also because she has beautiful eyes. She's beautiful because she sees only the positive in other people. Just if my personal advice, if somebody would ask me what is the most important character in a person, this would be the most important character. For a person to see the good and the positive in everything in life, that makes a good wife and a good mate. Agreed? All right, let's move on. Okay, so now, okay, we have 10 minutes. Yeah, the most beautiful things are in the eyes is where you look at things. Okay, here we go. I must do this first part simply because even though it's very famous, I'll do this as quick as possible. We are introduced to Avraham for the very first time. Avraham is the father of our nation. He's the only one that's called Avraham Avinu. The only one, right? I mean, we call all of them the Avot, but he's known as Avraham Avinu. We are introduced that Hashem at the age of 75 begins by giving Avraham tests. Very famous. I say this often. Let's do this quick. Says the Mishnah, Asaran nisyonot nitnasa Avraham Avinu, va'amad bekula, lahodia kama chibato shel Avraham Avinu. Hashem gave Avraham 10 tests, 10 challenges. We have to understand that when we're given a challenge, it's coming out of love. That's what the Mishnah says. Kama chibato shel Avraham Avinu. This week's Parsha's challenge is that you have to leave Eretz Haran. We'll get to that in a minute. But we have to understand that the entire existence in our world is based on challenges. Let's just do for a second. Here we go. We see in previous articles that Avraham Nisyonot are the prototypes for the experiences and spiritual struggles of our lives. Okay, I'm going to give this to you. The Zohar says this very, very, in philosophical. He's called Avraham Avinu because every test, every challenge that he succeeded, it became part of Avraham's Avinu DNA. And since we are all children of Avraham Avinu, he is called Avinu because now we have the potential of facing those challenges. That's what the rabbis tell us. Very famous word test. This is famous. Please try to remember this. Please teach this to your children. There's another way of understanding the word nisayon. Nisayon means a test. Let's do this fast. What is the root words of nisayon? Is a nes. What is a nes? You're going to tell me nes is a miracle. But nes is not a miracle. It is. But the original word nes is a banner, a flag. How do I know that's true? Because you all daven Shmona Esrei and you say, Tikah b'shofar gadol l'cheritenu, sound the great shofar for our freedom. V'sa nes. It doesn't mean raise a miracle. I think that was a movie. It means raise a banner. What is the goal of a banner, ladies and gentlemen? What's the goal of a banner? To show everybody what it is. What is the goal of a miracle? What is the goal of a nes? To show Hashem's greatness. What is the goal of a challenge? To show me how great I am. Without a challenge, there would never be. I asked the kids last week in my class, it was a boys' class. I said, how many people like tests? No one raised their hand. I said to them, anybody on the basketball team? Yes. I said, you had a test a couple of months ago. Really? Yeah. You played a competitive game. That's a test. How do you know how good you are unless you play against another team, unless you're challenged? You never know how good. If you don't have anything to compete with or to challenge with, you don't know how great you are. The goal of Hashem's nisyonot is to bring out the strongest that we have. And therefore, this saying says, I'm thankful for my struggle because without it, I wouldn't have stumbled across my strength. Let's do that again. I'm thankful for my struggle because without it, I wouldn't have stumbled across my strength. Hashem does not give you the people you want. He gives you the people you need to help you, to hurt you, to leave you, to love you, to make you the person you were meant to be. Okay. Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm throwing this out not with a light heart. I do understand that people face many different challenges in life. And not always is it easy to understand the need for those challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, that is, I'm not shying away from that. That's a different shiur. And if you want, you can email me. I will dedicate a shiur to that, to maybe try to get to understand God's ways. We can't understand fully God's ways. But I want to show you something that I think is a hidden message in the very first test that is recorded. By the way, I didn't do it this year. You know that there were other tests that he had. He was thrown into Kivshan HaEsh. We'll talk about that. Not now. This is the first test, right? Can you look at this for a second? This is simple. You can ask the kids this question. Hashem, in the beginning of this parsha, Vayomer Hashem el Avraham, Lech Lecha. That's the test, right? Leave everything. Me'artzecha, from your land. Umi Molatetecha, from the city that you were born in. Mibeit Avicha, from your father's house. Tell me, isn't that order not in order? No? Okay, I am leaving my house. I'm first leaving Cookie's house. That's first. Then I'm leaving Brooklyn. Then I'm leaving New York State to a governor that's better than we have. Right. Now, that's the order, right? So it should have said, leave Beit Avicha. Avi, no? Is that an obvious question? That's an obvious question. You know what I think the Torah is saying? Hashem only gives challenges to people in the situation that they're able to handle it. It starts slower, then it gets a little harder, then it gets a little harder. Because Hashem understands that he has to make it to the person in the right koach. Meaning, what's the hardest of the three for Avraham to do? Beit Avicha, that's the hardest. So Hashem leaves that for last. First, I'll get him strong enough to leave Artzecha. Then I'll get him strong enough to leave Moledet, which is the country, city, and then Beit Avicha. That's a big deal. So again, I'm fringing on belief in Hashem for difficult times, but do understand that challenges do make us stronger. I need to throw this in, even though, okay, you guys are not going anywhere. Do you know that I was thinking to myself, Avraham Avinu was 75. What was Avraham doing? And we remember that famous story that he broke the idols as a kid, right? What was he doing for the last 60 years in Haran? Do you know what he was doing for 60 years in Haran, him and Sarah? They opened up a Chabad house. No, they did. Avraham Avinu wasn't sitting around zooming. No. He was building shuls. He was talking about God. He had a Shabbos program. He had a NCSY program. He had a Yachad program. He had a Chesed mission. And then all of a sudden God says, leave it all. Do you understand the challenge to that? It wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a spiritual challenge. Sorry, you have to leave not only your family, but all the hard work you were doing. Where am I going? And in the beginning, God says, I'll let you know. Can you imagine? I'll let you know. And he ends up going to a place, we're going to get to it in a second, that is a terrible place. So that's a big challenge. Okay. I'd really like to do two more things because you guys are a great audience. I love this mute button. Nobody says anything. Okay, great. Here we go. So next challenge. He comes, he leaves everything. He leaves the Chabad house, he leaves his parents, he leaves everything. Oh, by the way. No, I'm not done. Another rabbi says, Avraham's entire existence was chesed, right? You all said that. Who was he leaving in Haran? Who's he leaving?
The people he converted.
I said that. Who else is he leaving?
What?
He's leaving his father. You leave your father alone? An elderly person? Who's going to take care of your father? That's what you're doing, Avraham Avinu? You're the big Baal Chesed? Where's your Kibbut Abayim? Where's your need to take care of your parents? Do you understand the challenge that he had? Everything he stood for, his spirituality, his parents. God said so. God said so. And when God says so, that's what you do. Okay. He gets to Canaan. He leaves all of that. And he gets to Canaan and there's a Rav. Can you imagine? No Chabad house, no nothing. Not even Chalav Yisrael. What's he going to do without Chalav Yisrael? So he has to go to Mitzrayim. He goes down to Mitzrayim, and we all know the story. Okay, I must do this, and when your husband complains to me, I'll have to say that I don't know what he's talking about, okay? I must do this before we end this shiur. So we know the story. Let's get to the story. So the story is that he's afraid that Sarah is going to be taken away from him, so he says Sarah is his sister. We all know that, right? Sarah is taken by Paro. Paro gets beat up by the Malach, and then he wakes up the next morning and he tells Avraham, yo, look at that, you're an amazing guy. And Avraham becomes an instant millionaire. Okay, we'll get to the Sayon soon. An instant millionaire. But can I show you what the pasuk says and what the Gemara learns from that? It's afraid to turn off the Zoom now. Don't stay for this. No, I'm kidding. Here we go. Ula Avram heitiv ba'avura. And he benefited Avraham for her sake. Who's he? Doesn't say. It should have said that Paro gave Avraham. It doesn't say that. And Avraham was benefited by him for her sake. And he had son, Ubakar, and he became a millionaire. So look at this. Here we go. No, look at this. According to the simple interpretation of this verse, the Bible is describing how Paro showered Avraham with gifts. However, since the verse does not mention Paro by name, it says he. The Gemara says the verse is referring to Hashem, who is the source of blessing. Accordingly, the verse teaches that Hashem treated Avraham well on account of his wife. And therefore, says the Gemara, a person must always be careful about sustaining the honor of his wife, as blessing is found in a person's house only because of his wife. And it is stated in this thing, which I just read, that he dealt with Avraham well. Said Rava, what did Rava say to the residents of Mechuza? That's a city. Honor your wives, so you will become rich. There it is. There it is. You have to tell the husbands, you want to succeed in business, what do you got to do? You got to honor your wife. Guys, I didn't make this up. This is not just, that's what the Gemara says. Based on this week's parsha, it means that Hashem was benefiting Avraham because of the way he respected Sarah. Is that crazy? And that doesn't end. It's a pasuk, one more pasuk in Mishlei written by Shlomo HaMelech. I guess he knew how to honor wives. He had 1,000 of them. But here it goes. He who finds a wife, this is Mishlei. This is not a saying. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. Okay. Can I push this another 5 minutes? If anybody wants to go, can go. We got to finish this last point. This is a famous one with a very weird Rashi. I love it. I have a lot to say. I'll just get to the point. So now, can we look back for a second? Do you know that sometimes we can't, I'll give you a famous mashal. My teacher showed me a mashal that a person was brought into a room, blindfolded. He was brought up to a wall, his nose facing the wall, take the blindfold off, and asked, what do you see? He says, I see a dirty wall, because what he sees right there with his nose up there is a little spot on the wall, dirty wall. They put the blindfold back and they brought him back to the back of the room. Then they took the blindfold off and they say, what do you see? He now sees the whole wall and they ask him, what do you see? He says, I see a beautiful painting, a beautiful mural. And that spot that he saw before, which was a dirty piece of wall, was an intricate part of the painting. When Avraham was told to go to Canaan, and he got to Canaan, and it was terrible. That was the dirty wall. Avraham stood his test. He didn't complain. But now let's see how God works. Avraham needs to establish a Chabad house in Eretz Yisrael. Avraham needs to be a Baal Chesed. Avraham has to bring people under Kanfei HaShekhinah. He has to open a hotel. What do you need, Cookie? Tell them to open a Chabad house. Money. You need money. You need to have fundraising. How do you become an Avraham Avinu without money? So you bring him to Canaan and you make a dark spot. It's terrible. It's awful. That forces him to go to Egypt. He goes to Egypt. He has the experience with Paro, and he's a multimillionaire. There you go. So that dark spot 3 weeks ago was the harbinger of success. There you go. Now I got to show you something really cool. If you have patience, if you don't mind. Guys, I have nothing to do. I could be here all day. I really have nothing to do today. Okay, here we go. You have to suffer. No, but I really want you to see this, and then we'll end. So Avraham now comes up from Egypt, him and his wife and Lot, and they are heavy with cattle, silver, and gold. He's a multi-millionaire. Okay, last thing we're doing, just this piece. Vayelech lemasa'av. He went on his journeys from the south until Bethel. Adam Makom Hasham. He goes back to where he was in Canaan, right? Okay, see, he goes on his journeys. Says Rashi, Kishechazar mi Mitzrayim le'eretz Canaan, haya holech vilan bachsaniot shalan behem alichato leMitzrayim. The Torah is telling us, you have to understand that his trip from Canaan to Mitzrayim was not overnight. He didn't have El Al. He had to go a few days. So he stopped at certain places. See, he went and lodged in the same inns that he lodged on his way to Egypt. Okay, that's a pasuk. It says that openly. Try to imagine it, right? On the way down, he went to Holiday Inn here. Okay, very nice. He went to, this. Very nice. He stopped at the same places on his way back up. Why? Why did he do that? So Rashi has two explanations. The first one is derech eretz. I like this. Derech eretz. L'limetra derech eretz. Shelo yishaneh adam me'achsanya shelo. I want to stop and do this for a second. A person should not change his lodgings. Guys, think about this for a second. Let's say Safreda and I are going to deal for Shabbos, right? So Jeannie invited me to stay in her house. So I went to Jeannie's house. We had a wonderful time. It was fantastic. Very nice. 3 weeks later, we need to go to deal again. I don't tell Jeannie I'm going to deal, right? And then all of a sudden, right, Ralph comes to shul and he sees that I went to somebody else's house. Jeannie, how do you feel about that? No, it's insulting, right? It's insulting. I mean, at least call and say something. Now, he couldn't call there. There's no calling. So you don't do that. It's not derech eretz. Isn't that nice? It's not derech eretz. It's not derech eretz to do that. You have to be sensitive to other people's feelings. Okay, nice. Watch the next and the last one. This is the last one till the next last one. Ready? Here we go. Davar acher. B'chazarato kara hakafotav. On his return, he paid his debts. Can I read that again? He paid his debts. Okay, a debt means that you owe. I'm assuming owe money. 1 second. So you're going to tell me, yeah, because on his way down he had no money. Remember I told you? Really? Avraham Avinu went around going to hotels and said, I'm not paying. I don't say he left a whole bunch of unpaid debts. Maybe that's how they raise money for yeshivas. I don't know. But how? That's what they did? And that doesn't make sense to me. Last line, and I have a lot of proof, but okay, it'll be the end. You know what rabbis want to learn? When Avraham was going through his nisayon, he didn't know how to answer the question, really, you believe in God? And this is what God does to you? Look at you. You're poor. You have nothing. He had a debt. People asked him, how do you love God and how does God love you if this is how he treats you? Now that he could look back and realize that his whole system was to get to Mitzrayim and to become wealthy, he now understands what God did. You know what he has to do? He has to go back to all those places and show them the miracle that God made for him. It's a Kiddush Hashem, and I have a lot of proof. I don't have time. That's why we have a Sudat Hoda'ah, which means when something happens and we're able to show that God really did it for a reason, it's our job to go and publicize it for everybody to see. And we end with this statement, at least on the bottom, and that's it for today. It is often when we stand still and look back that we see Hashem's hands revealed. All right, guys, sorry to keep you longer, but I always love learning with you. Everybody say hello to everybody else and have a great